Well, thanks so much, Tim, for hosting this town hall, and I'm really grateful for those of you who took time out of your Saturday morning to be here. I want to take a moment to introduce, if you don't know him already, John Fischel. He's a member of our Jeffco Wildfire Commission. Our commission is working incredibly hard to ensure the Jeffco Wildfire Task Force recommendations, of which there were several, continue to move forward in a way that really helps to reduce wildfire risk. In addition, we're looking at new issues and ways to secure additional grant dollars through our open space department as well. So we'll talk more about that in a moment. But one of the things I wanted to share with you first and just bring to your attention is Jeffco Open Space has put together a one-pager, double-sided, that talks about the dollars we've raised to help with wildfire risk in Jefferson County. And one of the things I wanted to share with you is that many of you already know that Jefferson County ranks #1 in the state for potential property loss due to wildfire risk. Colorado ranks #3. I have the honor of serving on the Colorado Fire Commission, and I'm one of 2 county commissioners appointed by the governor. I've been on that commission for a number of years, along with Sean Jewell with West Metro. We do a lot of work together. And one of the areas that we focused on, we've been working with Senator Cutter on this over the last 2 years, is how we look at multiple approaches to reducing wildfire risk. Because we know that there's no one strategy. It's really about hardening homes. How do we ensure homes are ignition resistant so residents have homes to come back to after a wildfire? How do we ensure there's defensible space around those homes to help protect them and to help firefighters? How do we ensure that many of our volunteer fire departments, especially up in our foothills community, are able to address the decrease that we're seeing in volunteer firefighters? And if you listen to Colorado Public Radio this morning, you may have heard the story about Congressman Negus's work on a federal level to increase pay for firefighters as well, because we need them and they are incredible partners who put their lives on the line every single day, along with our sheriff's department and deputies as well. They are true partners working side by side. So the Colorado Fire Commission does a lot of work and looks at these issues, and we also work very closely with the Wildfire Matters Legislative Committee, on which Senator Cutter serves and has chaired, as well as Representative Story. So it's important to note that we tackle these issues at the state, county, and local levels, as well as work with our congressional delegation too. Just a couple of areas that we're working on in Jefferson County. There are 3 in particular. And the first big area really focuses on homes, and that comes back to strategic planning for wildfire safety. It's working with homeowners to help inventory and assess your property. We do that work with the help of the fire departments leading that effort as you think about, what do I need to do to ensure that I've got defensible space around my home? What does that look like? They've got great folks on staff who can also help you with that. Planning and zoning regulations. A big part of what county commissioners do is look at issues regarding codes and regulations, which may sound kind of boring, but it's actually really critical to this conversation. Senator Baisley knows, and Senator Cutter, there was a big effort underway this legislative session that was 2 years in the works to create a wildfire resiliency board. And this board will come together over the next couple of years to develop minimum codes for the wildland-urban interface. And that's huge. Those are some of the codes that we've already put in place here in Jeffco. So for example, if you live in what's called the wildland-urban interface, you want to pull a permit to build a new deck or a new roof, the codes now require that they are ignition resistant, and that's really a critical part. Or let's say you're a developer and you're looking at building a few homes in the wildland urban interface. You have to ensure that those materials are fire ignition resistant as well. In addition to that, you have to prove that you have defensible space around your home, and we've already seen defensible space around Jeffco homes where building permits have been pulled double. So we're really happy with the results that we're seeing from those codes. The challenge is we need to ensure that it's consistent from county to county. That's how we get a bigger bang for the work that we're doing together. I also want to underscore for everyone that it is not Republican or Democrat or unaffiliated. This is about how we all come together to protect our community from wildfire risk. And we work in concert together to do that. We may have different views on how we get there, but we also had Republican county commissioners who came forward to support the WUI Code Board. I also have to give a lot of credit to Senator Cutter, who held multiple stakeholder meetings with many different partners, and to our fire chiefs, who were also really critical on the ground, giving us feedback on moving that bill forward. In addition, another big area that we're focusing on is a major initiative that updates our countywide wildfire protection plan, other regs and zoning in the wildland-urban interface. One area we're looking at is how do you define the wildland-urban interface? And Sean and I can tell you that that's a lot harder than you may think it is. We both served on the WUI subcommittee for the Colorado Fire Commission that ultimately brought the proposal to the governor and to legislators that created the code board. And many of us have different perspectives on what it should be. There are some who would argue that all of Jeffco should be in the WUI. There are some who would say just conifer, evergreen, higher elevations. Still others who say you should include the grasslands areas too. So those are debates that we'll also see at the state level, and we'll certainly have a voice in those conversations at the local level too. So in addition to those areas, the second major area that we look at is reducing fuels or mitigation. Jefferson County Open Space has more than 50,000 acres of parks and more than 230 miles of trails. So one of the areas that we look at is how do we strategically pinpoint thinning forests that are not healthy to reduce wildfire risk. And sometimes that can be jarring for our residents. We've had some residents hike the trail along Flying J and say, what happened? But then 3, 4, 5 years later, that forest comes back much more healthy and more fire resilient. So sharing that with our community is really important. One of the areas that we're also looking at as part of the Colorado Fire Commission's work, and also here in Jeffco, are issues around prescribed burns. And there's a history with prescribed burns, certainly here in Jefferson County, and how we approach that strategically. I was able to go out on a prescribed burn and was amazed, but not surprised, given the good people behind it, about how specific those efforts were in terms of weather conditions, wind, and more. But that also is one more tool to look at in our toolbox. The other area, or third area, that we're looking at is once we collect all the slash, whether it's dead tree limbs or vegetation that you remove from around your home, pine cones and more, what do we do with that? And so we have doubled in Jefferson County our slash collection efforts. You have responded as a community. We've seen the highest return on slash collection that we've ever seen before last year. We're hoping to break those records this year because we can't do this work without you. We are also looking at creating 2 year-round slash collection sites, so you don't have to wait for the summer slash collection program in Jeffco to remove that vegetation from around your home, because we know it's such an important effort. And then in addition, we're also looking at biochar possibilities, which really is a soil additive that is healthy for our forests, and also is one way to use the remains of the slash that we may end up burning. So we're looking at that as well. We have brought together different pots of money, ranging from federal dollars to local dollars. We're one of only 7 counties that has received state dollars from the Department of Natural Resources because of our high wildfire risk. Together, those dollars amount to $9.2 million to focus on these efforts and others as we move forward. More than anything, I want to thank all of our partners who are involved in this work, because we don't operate on an island. Thanks to the Sheriff's Department, to our fire departments across Jefferson County, our legislators with whom we can't do this work. We partner together very often on these efforts, as well as you, our community, Jeffco Open Space Emergency Management, and more. And I know Sheriff Marinelli may have more to say on that. Any quick questions, or they don't have to be quick, but any questions that you might have for me specific to county issues? Yes.
I have 2 questions.
Yes.
So number 1 is, how difficult would it be to adopt wildfire partners, since Boulder County already has that, and so we know it works?
Yeah.
I've talked to Jim Webster several times.
Yeah.
I believe it's in year 5. They've worked through the issues, they've tweaked it, they've updated it, they've made adjustments, they've done all kinds of things to it. It solves a lot of our insurance issues, and it solves a lot of our environmental issues. It also, you're probably going to laugh, but when I was at the county commissioners meeting, I had a group of residents that were not happy about a developer, and I really think it helps solve some of the social issues tension between residents and you.
One of the things that we're going to look at with our Jeffco Wildfire Commission coming up is a look at the Wildfire Partners program in Bolton. It's a great program, no question about it. I think what we also have to look at is what we already have in place, like home assessments that mirror what Wildfire Partners is doing, and where there might be potential gaps and how we fill those. Maybe it is a Wildfire Partners program in Jefferson County. Maybe it's a different approach where we look at where we need to tackle those gaps as well. What's your second question?
But there's one key difference with Wildfire Partners. If you follow if you go through their program, then you get a certificate from the county that says you've done fire mitigation, you've done zoning and planning, and you've done all these other things.
Right.
And then you can take that certificate and you give it to your insurance company.
Right.
There's no other program that does that, because I've looked at all of them. I've spent several years
Yeah,
looking at them.
doing a deeper dive. We're going to talk more about that in our next
It
Wildfire
basically puts
Commission
the,
meeting.
it integrates the county, the community, zoning and planning, the insurance industry together, which is what I think that we're missing.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Tim. Any other questions?
Yes.
I have a second.
Go ahead.
That's right. Why don't you go ahead? I gotta think about it.
And then if there are others we haven't heard from this morning, we'd love to hear from you too.
This is a general question that ran into looking at the fire manual and what the fire marshals deal with. Ingress and egress options, as long as there's sprinklers and a certain amount of units, you only need one. However, the marshal fire and other things have proven that when the fire comes from the outside in, the sprinklers don't seem to work. So how is not having that second option of getting out of a neighborhood, especially if it's on the back half, say, help with wildfire, because sprinklers don't seem to help with marshal fire type options?
There's nothing that's going to help with marshal fire.
Well, the second option would help.
Yeah, I mean, and that's part of the stuff that we've been working on as far as this the Louis board is having those egress routes, and that's also part of the CWPP as well. The plans that we create is those things are all looked at. But as far as when you have those type of winds, like Sheriff Kelly, he described in one of our meetings soon after, we had a target and a cost to go down. There's no mitigation, no sprinkler that's ever going to stop that.
That's to my point. So what I'm seeing developers do, Ralston Valley Coalition, what have you, we're seeing developers rely on sprinklers to only have one option for people to get in and out of a new neighborhood. And it's passing because it fits in the fire manual. When I asked, they said, oh, go talk to the people who are going to make the 2024 edition or whatever it was. It didn't really help.
A couple things I'd share, Mike. One thing that I mentioned a little bit earlier is we're launching a major initiative related to our comprehensive master plan. And you may be thinking, what is that? Why does that matter? How is it significant? The comprehensive master plan is our guiding document that we use as county commissioners to make decisions about whether someone's piece of property is rezoned. And that has a direct impact on growth and development. And one of the things that we know is that growth and development in the wildland-urban interface will only continue, especially as we see our populations increase. So we have to be really smart and strategic about how we think about this work. One thing I would encourage all of you to do is to take part in those conversations. If you Google Jeffco Planning and Zoning, we'll have opportunities for surveys, focus groups, also both English and Spanish speakers as well, to give your input on some of those very issues that we heard Mike raise. Tim, you had another question?
Yeah, so you'll be happy to know that I signed up to be on Together Jeffco.
Good, that's good. That's great.
But one of the things I have observed is we do not have what I would call a cohesive communications between the county, our residents, the sheriff's department, the firefighters, and our environmental organizations. Because there's a lot of environmental issues here. There are a lot of public safety issues. And then, one of the things I heard at the county commissioners meeting is we have a $14 million deficit in the county government. We don't have enough money. I'm sure there's things Sheriff Marinelli wants to do that she can't. And what I want to know is how can we, as residents and taxpayers and citizens, how can we help her?
Well, I think Sheriff Marinelli can tackle that head on and address that question for you. What I would say is we're always looking to improve collaboration and partnership. I have a slightly different perspective than you do about our current partnership and collaboration. We were very strategic about who's engaged in the Wildfire Commission in terms of members and making sure that they represent different stakeholder groups across our county. We've also done that with the Colorado Fire Commission. You'll also see that with the Wildfire Resiliency Code Board as well. But the best advice that I would share with community members is you are really our eyes and ears on the ground. So the issues that percolate up from our communities are most helpful for us as we look to attract more dollars, as we look at additional strategies and best practices to reduce wildfire risk. And let me share with you too my cell phone number, because if you have ideas or thoughts or concerns, please reach out to me directly. My cell phone is 303-638-3433. And that comes directly to me. So happy to work with you further and appreciate the opportunity.
I have one last comment.
And let me just ask really quick too, Tim, are there any other questions from other community members? Oh.
So I just want to say that Lesley is doing a phenomenal job. I've seen Lesley at 8 o'clock in the morning out in the community. I've seen her at 8 or 9 o'clock out in the community. I am not trying to say that she's not doing a good job. She is doing a phenomenal job. What I'm trying to say is that the way Colorado is structured, the state government's up here, the fire districts are over here, the sheriff's department's over here. It has nothing to do with you. It's the way our state is structured. So that is what I'm saying. It's not that I'm saying that the fire districts are doing anything wrong. I'm not saying that Sheriff Marinelli is doing anything wrong. I'm just saying that the way our state is structured, that's where the challenges come in.
And I would also add that that's why the work we do on the Colorado Fire Commission with multiple partners from different areas that you just touched on, the work we do on the Wildfire Commission, the work like this that we do in our communities is so important in terms of building that collaboration. I think we work a lot closer and partner a lot more on some of these issues than what you may think.
Well, we don't
And I will just also
we don't
add,
see it as citizens.
yeah, and that's why I'm sharing with you some of those different ways we do it, and there are also other ways that we can always improve and strengthen that collaboration, because without that, we won't be successful. So I want to thank you so much, Tim, for the opportunity to share more about what we're doing at the county level in conjunction with the state, our fire chiefs, and others. And again, if you ever have any questions or concerns, please contact me directly. Thanks so much. Appreciate it.
Lisa, do you want to talk or Sheriff Marinelli? I'm not.
Calm down. Okay, so it's nice to see you all here this morning, and always great to go after Commissioner Dahlkemper, who does do amazing things at the county level. So first, I just want to say that when listening to all the conversation this morning, I really think it's important to understand that fire is not necessarily a divisive topic. I mean, we, as Commissioner Dahlkemper said, we disagree sometimes on the way to get there, but I find it to be an extraordinarily collaborative space. I love serving on the interim wildfire committee, Wildfire Matters interim committee. I've served on it my entire time as a legislator, and one of the things that I find most satisfying is that we all care. Fire is an issue that affects everyone in this state. Whether you can live in the heart of Denver, and when that smoke rolls down the mountain from horrible wildfires, then you're affected. Your air quality is affected. Your kid has an asthma attack. This is something that touches all of us. And Republicans and Democrats, we work together. We sometimes disagree on how to get there, but we all agree that it's an issue and we need to work together to fix it. So I love working in that space. I also want to say that, and I'll talk a little bit more about the process and sort of what we do at the state level, but it is an extraordinarily complex issue. And I want y'all to know that we do work together and collaborate quite a bit, which is not always visible to, and not just the legislature between both parties, but state agencies, local governments. We all work together in a number of ways to communicate and work on these issues side by side. So I also love that. And in our work, we rely on experts. I have a lot of great ideas, but maybe they're not really feasible. So we really lean on the experts talking to us through the committee process and through the whole thing to shape the legislature that we end up forwarding. So with that said, I will kick it off the top and just say that the environment, I know Tim talked a little bit about the environmental overlap, And that's really what formed my decision to become a legislator is, I guess one of the things, is my deep concern about the environment and the beautiful state we live in and climate change and the way things are changing so dramatically, affecting our water and our forests and recreation and business and all of those things are impacted by climate change. And it does really require a holistic approach. So I work quite a bit on legislature to address environmental things, sustainability. Landfills, for example, release a ton of methane. And so I've worked a lot on zero waste initiatives and trying to get us to that place, which is really a long road to address wildfire, but it is an important part of the puzzle. So we do approach these things at a holistic level, and I think that's really important. Let's see. Oh, and we do, we know anyone you talk to will agree, will tell you that wildfires are increasing in frequency and intensity, and it's because of extreme weather caused by climate change, extreme drought, dryness. All these things contribute to, as well as many other factors, contribute to the intense wildfires we've been having. So there is a statewide approach. We do have a unique state in many, many ways. We have some tax structures that make it difficult for us to fund certain things in specific ways. We have a local control approach. So, so that's sort of how things are based and how they're run in Colorado. There is, like I said, though, a lot of coordination between agencies and things. About 10 years ago, the Department of Public Safety was formed, and that is sort of the overarching model for the state that coordinates all the activities, dispatches mutual aid when different areas need help and assistance, coordinates all the big picture resources. So we do have a lot of communication and coordination that way. We also have the committee, as Commissioner Dahlkemper mentioned, we have the Wildfire Matters Interim Committee. And last year, the commission, the Fire Commission brought forward several ideas and that we consider for legislation. So lots of what we do is because of what experts and people who are working out there are telling us we need to do, and that informs how we move forward. So we've done quite a bit of legislation in the last several years to address the wildfire crisis, and we'll continue to do quite a bit of legislation. The state has put millions and millions, I don't actually have I should have got that figure, but millions of dollars into wildfire. Maybe, do you know Senator Baisley? I know. And we do a lot of things, so it's hard to keep track of one specific thing. But we put millions of dollars into mitigating and addressing the wildfire threat, and we'll continue to do so. One thing, our committee starts this summer, I'm not sure when, probably we'll start meeting in late July or August, and we'll hear from many people. But one thing I'm hoping to do before then, in the spirit of coordination and collaboration at all levels, is I've talked to Congressman Neguse about, he works on wildfire issues, as you all know, at the federal level, and I've talked to him about perhaps discussing before we meet in committee ways that we can better collaborate or things that we might consider at the state level that could help us draw down more federal support, more federal dollars. So I think that'll be a really beneficial way to connect us and help us inform what we're doing. So I'm going to just tell you a few of the bills that that have passed over the last few years, so you have an idea of how we're approaching this and the scope of what we've done. This past year, let's see. We did a bill to better investigate, to provide resources to better investigate the causes of fires, wildfires specifically, but all fires throughout the state. I was a sponsor of that, a prime sponsor, and I think it's really important because if you have data, if you understand why the fire started and how, we all heard about Marshall Fire, right, and what happened. So now we can assess the situation and perhaps try to mitigate future situations that might, come from the same causes. So we're looking at, so we're going to be putting quite a bit of money and resources towards that. So we have additional investigators throughout the state. We purchased a second Firehawk helicopter, which will be quite an asset in suppression. We did a representative story, and I ran a bill to increase reforestation efforts to better support the state tree nursery. And again, that's a climate change thing as well. Once we, when we plant and reforest, that helps sequester carbon and helps our forest, repopulate and become beautiful, the beautiful forest that we love and we're accustomed to in Colorado. So I'm really excited about that. That could actually help us become a regional hub for reforestation efforts throughout the area and provide some income back to the state as well. Provide a real ROI. We've have several grant programs to help homeowners retrofit their homes, help with with fire suppression, just fire safe materials. Also mitigate their homes. There's some tax credit things that people can draw on to help defray the cost of mitigation, because as I'm sure you know, it can be quite costly. Let's see what else. Well, and Commissioner Dahlkemper talked about the code board, and I'm really particularly excited about that. It was a fabulous example of all sides of the aisle, all perspectives coming together to really figure out what is going to be best for Colorado. We have representatives from all over the state, from all levels of government and experts and insurance people are going to sit at the table that are going to come together to develop these minimum standards for building. So that'll do a couple things. That will make us safer throughout the state, obviously. The fire community was really, really supportive of this, and I was really happy to listen to their concerns and take that into consideration in shaping this legislation further, because they're the ones that are putting their lives on the line. They're the ones who are there every day, who see how these fires play out and see what will be helpful to them. So I'm really excited about that. So lots of people are going to come together. Oh, and the other point I was going to make is that it will allow us to draw down on more federal BRIC grants. It will help make our applications more attractive in attracting some of that federal money. So that'll be great when that's all up and running. We've done several things to address access to insurance. That is a really, really tough problem. And I think we probably need to do more. I'm hoping we can address it this summer at at our committee meetings. But we've done, this past year we did fair access to insurance requirements so that Coloradans with homes and commercial properties in wildfire zones can insure their property and livelihoods when commercial insurers don't cover their area. So that's like an insurer of last resort. And we're requiring insurance companies to offer a variety of options that cover the repair or replacement of damaged or destroyed structures. Last year we also did several wildfire bills. We did a $10 million matching grant program to help local governments develop and fund sustainable forest management and wildfire mitigation efforts. And that's a bill that I ran too. So there's many ways to tackle this, and funding is a large part of it. We've done tax deductions, I mentioned before, created a new tax credit for wildfire mitigation expenses. We have put a ton of money into a wildfire mitigation grant program and expanded our mitigation and outreach and awareness campaigns. So that's something that every year there's a wildfire awareness week. And we put more resources behind that just to educate the public a little bit better. Because you are a key part of all this working properly. And I didn't do this at the top, but I want to credit Tim, and I know Ann has worked a lot on these issues, and all of you for being here, because it is really a group effort. We can do all these things at the state level and the county level, but it really boils down to community working together to support each other and mitigate your properties and do all the things that you can to help in this area. Let's see, lastly, there's just a few bills I'll close out with because we really have done some good things. We've created the Office of Climate Preparedness to better prepare and respond to future disasters. And we've, last year we also, the bill that Tim was referring to, HB 22-1111, ensured that homeowners displaced by wildfire disasters received a fair payout from their insurance companies, and streamlined the claims process and increased the minimum reimbursements. So that was good. We also did a lot to support volunteer firefighters. I was having a conversation in the back with someone about how important volunteers are in this space and how it's shocking that such a large percentage of our firefighters are volunteers. And we learned that during our committee, the deep dive we took in some areas during our Wildfire Matters Committee. And that's just not okay. We need to support them better. So we provided some funding so that these volunteer, all volunteer firehouses could upgrade their equipment. I mean, some of them were walking around in outdated hazard suits. I mean, that's not an okay thing to put them on the front lines, and equipment that's not 100% safe. They are also eligible to receive mental health benefits and behavioral health benefits, and also reimbursement for things like missing work and gas, mileage reimbursement. I mean, not only are we asking them to put their lives on the line for the community, but they're missing work, they're spending money out of their own pocket, their home may be threatened, and they're out helping community members. So that's something I felt really strongly about and was very happy to help with that. So lots is going on in the wildfire space, and as I said, I'm really proud to be working in this space. I love working there. I'll continue doing this as long as I'm a legislator because it's important to the community. And all of us in the foothills, I think, now to recognize that it's not just something confined to evergreen and conifer, which, as Commissioner Dahlkemper mentioned, are very, very high-risk areas. But all of us now really need to be thinking about these things. And I think a sad offshoot, I guess, of the Marshall Fire is that, I mean, it was a horrible, horrible, tragic thing, but it did raise awareness with people. And so I think I'm hearing a lot more from folks about how do we mitigate, how do we, look at ways to evacuate, all these things. So in that sense, it's a good thing that people are paying attention and understanding that wildfire could touch any of us. And does. So that's a lot. So your community actions are important, and you being here is important, and thank you. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to. Yes, Tim.
Of course you know I am. Okay, so I just want to point out to everybody that Lisa is our #1 champion. That is my opinion, but that is my observation. She's a superstar. She has gone to bat for us probably more than anybody on some of these issues. One of the things I did not hear, Lisa, is the cause of our fire situation, right? It's because we're in a 22-year drought, a 23-year drought, okay? It's because of CO2 emissions, which are raising our temperatures, and it's because of overdevelopment, right? We're building houses in WUI, and we don't really have a plan. And I know you say you have a plan, but I don't see it. Okay, so what I would like to know is, when you build a house, and you can look this up, a house you build today produces about 7 tons of CO2 a year. To offset that, you need about 200 or 300 trees. Okay, so if we're going to be a carbon neutral state, we need 200 or 300 trees for every new home that gets built. And if we keep building houses, we're putting hundreds of millions of tons of CO2 in the atmosphere, and we don't have a way to offset that. Okay? And that picture I showed of the Colorado high mountains with the aspen forests, okay? All of our forests are in decline. Okay? People will tell you they're not. I'm telling you they are. Okay? And I can give you data, I can show you information. Okay? The reason we have 1 billion dead trees is because of CO2. And I don't hear a solution of how we're going to do something about those 1 billion dead trees, and I also don't hear stuff about, and this is not you, this is our whole state. So, thank you.
Well, lots of those trees are on federal land too. So that's why it's important to partner with the federal government and understand what things they're doing and how we can work together. I did kind of touch on the environment. That's a whole thing. We go into a lot about climate change and environmental issues, but we are working. I mean, really that is another topic. We are working so much. I'm on the Transportation and Energy Committee. I was on Energy and Environment in the House. That's a real passion, something we're working at every level. Like, we get it, and many of us get it, not everyone, but we're working really, really hard to try and mitigate some of those things, but that's the long game. That is absolutely the long game. Let's see. But we do take a holistic approach. I do, and I know many of my colleagues do. In terms of building codes, there's a lot of complexity here, and I kind of alluded to that when I was talking before, but there's a lot of different reasons, like we're doing a statewide building code for the building standards, but in terms of like zoning and things and building homes, that's not, we're a local control state. So we absolutely cannot address that at the state level. That's something that local governments are responsible for. And I will just say that, you know, if you're gonna, I don't know how we prevent homes from going up and people from moving here. I mean, I don't know, that's again a bigger discussion on a whole different topic, but I think if they are gonna build here, the minimum thing we can do is to make sure that those homes are fire safe, as fire safe as they can be, and fire resilient. So that's what the code board is meant to address, and I have really high hopes for that. Reforestation, hugely important to me as well. I mentioned it briefly, but I don't think I didn't get too much into it, but I did a bill last year to provide a whole bunch of money to some COSWAP, a Colorado program to provide mitigation resources and funding, and also to create a carbon framework that the Colorado State Forest Service will have to use moving forward. Because it's a balance of, you know, when you remove the trees and how you know, controlled burns and like all of these things, because it's just this crazy cycle of wildfire releases, you know, CO2, and then I mean, it's just all related. So and climate change causes more fires, so we have to look at that in a holistic way and balance that out. Yeah.
But the thing we're not addressing is the urban areas, right? How do we have an urban canopy, right, or an urban forest? That is the thing that is contributing to the CO2 the most, and it is the thing we're not talking about. We're talking about, the forest is over here, but the thing we're not talking about is the urban areas. How do we do water conservation? How do we do native plants? How do we put in an urban forest in our neighborhood?
There's lots of movement on those things, and you may not always hear about these conversations, but we've done some things on agrivoltaics. I couldn't tell you specifically, I don't have the bill in front of me, but agrivoltaics is a process where they use solar panels and then grow things underneath using, you know, in tandem with the solar panels, so that would be great on urban roofs. So there's multiple benefits in terms of, you know, additional plants and cover. We've done, you know, there's water conservation conversations all the time, and that's not an area that I'm a deep expert in either, but I know that's a huge topic of conversation. It better be. Along with wildfire, we have a real serious and significant problem with water right now in Colorado. So that is definitely a conversation that's happening. I'm sure Senator Baisley's heard those talks too, right, and has interest in that area. What else did you mention? And like we've done a whole bunch of things. We've done a whole bunch of things about native plants and I think there's a bill to make sure that HOAs, you know, because a lot of times HOAs won't let you plant, you know, take out your grass. And we've done things that say, nope, you can have native plants, you can, I mean, so a lot of times it's a lot of little steps. We can't just universally make it happen. But it's a lot of little steps in that direction, and I can assure you those things are occurring and those conversations are occurring.
What about a carbon neutral position for our state? Carbon neutral, right? When we don't produce more carbon, we have a sequestration program.
We have carbon goals. We have carbon goals, and we're working towards that all the time. We do have goals at the state level. Did you have a question?
I do. Thank you for being here, by the way.
Thank
you for your efforts. I would love to know more about the grants available at the individual homeowner level. So I can find out more about it.
You know what? Let me connect with you, and I'll make sure that I send you in the right direction. So you're looking at mitigation, like I think the mitigation was a tax credit. Are you looking at?
No grants though, just tax credit.
Well, that one in particular is a tax credit. But let me make a note, and I will get back to you on that.
Thank you.
Anyone else have a question?
Yeah, the tax credits, the one we have in effect, covers mainly removing flammable brush and things like that. Although I think we can do hardening of homes under that too. But isn't there a new bill that was specifically designed this year to provide a tax credit for hardening homes?
There was I think the one you're looking at, cover the cost of retrofits or structural improvements to make them more resilient. I think that's House Bill 1273 there.
And that was approved and signed and everything?
Yes, I'm almost 100% sure. I think my colleague, Representative Snyder ran that, but I think that went all the way through. Yeah. Anybody else? Yes?
This is an interesting question about agrivoltaics, and you brought it up. They're looking at, Golden's looking at possibly doing some solar panels along the Hogback, along 93, just south of 56.
Oh,
But
nice.
talking to Colorado Parks and Wildlife, they're worried because once you put solar panels, you have to do exclusionary fencing. Then that's severe mule deer winter range. So while we're trying to solve one problem, we're creating another. And CPW and the Colorado Wildlife Federation, someone I work with, they're worried about the fact that you're going to take X amount of acres and just exclude them from mule deer because we're having obviously chronic wasting disease and other issues to keep their population up. So it's interesting when we talk sustainability. I said, well, why not what Jack Solar Garden does in agrivoltaics? He's like, well, it doesn't matter because we can't get the animals in there anyway. So it just becomes like a kind of cordoned off area. So it's kind of missing the mark. Why aren't we looking at more rooftop grant programs and things like that at the state level and saying, hey, Coors, instead of going out and doing this in good land, why don't we look at rooftops and use the heat and the light that's shining down right there and use the real estate that's already been developed?
I mean, that's a great question, and that is a great suggestion, and I am really interested in that space, and I'm going to look into it a little bit more.
Okay.
But I really love that you brought up how complicated it is, right? Because like all these things are interrelated. We have to step back and look at it at a holistic level because maintaining biodiversity and the deer population and there's so many pieces of this whole environmental picture that contribute, and it's just not as easy as you know, we'd like it to be, let's say.
Yeah, I brought it up to one of the developers that's working on 93, and he just looked at me and he says, you're against solar? I'm like,
no!
I'm against anything that's going to take away from the mule deer range because CPW has already said that we've lost half of our mule deer since 2009.
Yeah.
That hurts both sides, you know, like you say, whether you like the environment or whether you like hunting and eating deer,
Yeah.
doesn't matter. There's half of them that used to be. Why is that? And then you're taking land that they need in tough winters away. So I wasn't saying I wasn't against solar, it just was, how do you knit?
But it goes back to the complexity of everything.
Yeah.
Because now you start putting on the roofs. Well, that's what we've been on. And we got to be up there. So now it's another hazard that we face on the roof. So it's a challenging, but I truly believe there's a balance. Sure, there's a balance.
Yeah.
So that's something I didn't even think about. I know there's transparent, translucent solar panels now, but none of that changes your part of the equation, but there are new technology that goes through as well.
Right, and that's what we need to support innovation. We need to support a circular economy that sort of, I mean, that's a whole nother topic, but that's you know, using the resources we have and recycling them through the system and creating markets for that. I mean, there's so many ways that we can be smart about this and work together, and that's why it's important to listen. You know, when we do legislation, you know, we listen to I might not agree with everything everyone says, and I might not take every solution or suggestion, but I'm going to listen because I don't have all the answers, and lots of people with different perspectives look at things, you know, from a different place and can come with good suggestions and solutions. So that's why it's really important that we listen to experts, we listen to people that it impacts, we listen to people from all sides to develop this, because there's lots of great solutions and there are complicated problems.
Thank you.
Thank you for the question. Does anyone else have any? Come on.
I'd like to request Sheriff Marinelli to go next, because I want to be respectful of her time.
Good morning, everybody, and thank you for coming. Thank you for putting this on. I'm Reggie Marinelli. I'm the new sheriff of Jefferson County. We just hit, I think today is 5 months in office. So there's a lot of things we've been doing. Right now, I know Tim brought up our motor vehicle thefts. I am happy to say that the first quarter of this year compared to last year, we are going down. We put some things into effect right around December, and those seem to be working. And so hopefully that will continue to go down. As far as the fire mitigation, which I think is the number one thing that you guys are here for today and to learn about that stuff, we have revamped our emergency management program and the focus of that program, along with our incident command. We have hired a new position, and we are in the process of writing a second new position for our emergency management, along with the positions that we've already had. And so that will be growing. We are working diligently with the county commissioners, with all of our state legislators, and all of our fire departments. We have meetings with them regularly. I cannot speak of what happened prior to my taking office, but I can tell you that since January, we are working very closely with the county. We are working very closely with open space, the forest rangers at the state level, the rangers from open space level, and then also with all of our fire departments. I know, speaking of Marshall Fire, it was part of my command that was out in Louisville that led some of that, because we had more experience with some of my staff had more experience with the fires. And when it comes to leaving areas and getting out, we don't design those neighborhoods, but we as law enforcement have to deal with getting the evacuations done. I can tell you it was part of my team that was up in Louisville knocking down fences and putting people on sidewalks through the parks to head east, because that fire was coming so fast. We have never dealt with something that was moving that fast and that swiftly. It is the new normal for us. And so we sit down with not only all the local fire departments, but we sit down with Boulder, we sit down with Douglas, we sit down with Clear Creek, Park County, because if something happens in those jurisdictions, where is it heading? 99.9% chance it's going to be heading our way. And so we are dealing with all of those other counties and coming together. Our goal is that we don't have all the different entities coming at you. We would like to get one coordinated position that brings all the information together. At a meeting a couple weeks ago, we were talking about when you as citizens come to these meetings, and the larger ones, especially up in Conifer and Evergreen, and you have like 29 pamphlets to look at. Which pamphlet do you grab to take home? Because they're all good. They all have good information. But is there a way that we can collaborate and come together and do one that has all that information? So when you show up, you can take one, and you know it's the sheriff's department, you know it's the fire department, you know it's the zoning and building and open space that all have put that together. And that way you have one pamphlet, you don't have to look for 29 of them in your junk drawer. You've got one that gives you the resources that you need. I've got some of my staff here, they're taking notes for me today on the sustainability and all that stuff. Should the sheriff's department be involved in that? We kind of get involved in a lot of things that we maybe shouldn't, but we have to. We are talking about evacuation plans. However, we don't get to design those neighborhoods. If we did, believe me, we would design them a little bit different based on the wildfire. But we don't. So we deal with what we have. And our deputies know the areas, and that's who we have to rely on. One of the first things I mandated in January, for me, I've been with the Sheriff's Department, August will be 37 years. We used to always have fire behavior classes for the deputies, because when it comes down to a fire breaking out, who's evacuating? We are. We need to know how fire behaves. Let the fire department get up there and start fighting it. We evacuate, we need to know where it's headed. We need to have some education in fire behavior. So I can guarantee you that my entire patrol staff, as of a month ago, have all been trained in fire behavior, because it hadn't happened in over a decade. So we are diligently working towards that, so that a deputy knows how a fire is going to crown, how it's going to behave. Is it going to go east? Is it going to go west? We always give out the information as to the winds that are blowing and what direction and the speed per the wind and all that stuff. So the deputies are getting more in tune with the grass versus the trees and how those behave. And that hadn't happened in well over a decade. And why did that not happen? When funding gets cut, the first thing that gets cut is training, unfortunately. And it's not a mandate that we train in that. It's my mandate that my deputies train in it, but it's not a state mandate. And so we have to play with that training abilities. And so you guys have heard a lot from everybody. I know Lesley had another function that she was late to, that she had to leave to, so she apologized for leaving early, but what questions do you have of me? Yeah.
When you mentioned that you design things differently, we're looking at doing comprehensive plan, fire evacuation plan, and also some land development amendments in the Jeffco code. Are you ever a referral partner? Because I know Fish and Wildlife, CPW, Fire are referral partners for new developments, but did they ever call you guys, or is that something that could change?
You know, we are working with that. We just had a meeting this last week on a whole nother topic with the Board of County Commissioners because we keep building, but they never think of per capita how many citizens per police officers. So the country club, Green Gables, 152 acres was just developed with residential and commercial. Well, when you build something like that, if you build it, they will come, which means your crime rate's going to go up. You put in 600 homes, you're going to get a domestic or two out of there. Who deals with that? Not zoning and planning, we do. And so we are right now bringing that to light with the county. Time out, because you're not thinking of the total picture on everything you're doing. And it's a great collaboration, don't get me wrong. So that's just an example of when they're building in Green Gables, for instance. It's great to have that property tax, but you just now took all of the deputies from South Jeffco and moved them over to an area that we didn't have a lot to do with when it was a golf course. And so things like that. So when it comes to the fire mitigation and that stuff, they are allowing us at the table now. And I don't know why that hasn't happened previously. Part of me is we need to keep looking forward and stop looking back and just work diligently with what we're doing moving forward.
Thank you.
This is a follow-on question. The Denver Post reported on an industrial warehouse complex, like an Amazon-style complex, that's being built or proposed to be built at 60th and McIntyre, right on the shore of Hyatt Lake. And I think Hyatt Lake is a backup water supply for fire suppression. We were at a community group held a transportation Townhall on Thursday night, and one of the questions was about McIntyre at that point, going from 58th up to 64th, and it's been widened as much as it can. And so one of the concerns that I hear you raising, and I was wondering if this is a concern for the Sheriff's Department in terms of evacuation, if a 512,000 square foot warehouse, like an Amazon warehouse, is built there with trucks and cars and all that congestion, is that kind of congested roadway a problem for evacuation plans? How is it considered in evacuation plans? How would that impact your job?
Congestion is always an issue with evacuation. One of the things that we talk about is, you know, a hurricane. The people that work emergency management in those situations, the weather people tell you days in advance it's coming. Fire does not give us that privilege. If we can teach fire how to communicate better, we'd all be doing good. But when the fire comes, we have to figure that evacuation out. So my team, and along with the fire departments, because we got to get the fire department in. So when we have homeowners, and it breaks my heart because I was born and raised in Louisville. So I know people that lost everything. The sheriff of Boulder County lost everything. While he's working, he can't even go take care of his own stuff. But we have to get the fire department up there. We'd like to let the citizens go back up, but it may not be possible always because we need to get people out. So we're looking at evacuations, and if that means instead of looking at a 1 mile radius and looking at a 10-mile radius, to just shut things down. You know, Walmart's not going to make a lot of money that day if we have to shut everything down around it. I'm okay with that. Walmart may not be, but I'm okay with that. But we have to start looking at that total picture. So you give an example of a city area up in the Arvada, Golden, unincorporated area up there on McIntyre. So to get people out of there if something were to happen, we can shut down Highway 58 at McIntyre and not let anybody within 5 miles of that. It all depends on the fire, its behavior, and we have to make those decisions immediately once it comes out. We can't make them, we can't make decisions today for what might happen in a year. So when a fire breaks out, we have to look at it, we have to look at its behavior, we have to look at the population, to include commercial population, and all of that comes into play when we start deciding how to evacuate and which direction to evacuate. Should we go up Highway 93 and send everybody to Boulder? Highway 93 is a pretty small highway.
So is Indiana.
So is Indiana.
The other way north is a 2-lane
Yeah.
road. How are we going to get out?
Yeah. And so all of that comes into play. I hope that answers it.
Yes, thank you very much.
Hi, I'm a retired guy and I'm involved with wildfire mitigation here, but I also find myself wanting to know, law and order kind of questions like who done it and how did they do it? And I thought the investigation up in Boulder County in the Marshall Fire was real interesting. They used some new techniques, but I have not seen that those new techniques of law enforcement and investigation used that much in wildfires around in our area. For example, I used to produce reports for Crime Stoppers, and 40, 50 reports over my career in television news, and I don't recall ever doing a report about a wildfire investigation. The sheriff's departments and police departments never came to us and said, hey, this is an unsolved, and there are lots of unsolved wildfire arsons. And is there any reason that you could think of that we wouldn't use the Crime Stoppers program just as an example to try to find out who done it?
Crime Stoppers is always an option in absolutely everything. What citizens don't realize is what we have and what we use. We've had arson investigators for years. We actually send West Metro Fire Department through our police academy. So they're certified as law enforcement officers and arson investigators, and that they can actually file criminal cases as cops. So we've been doing that for years, and citizens don't realize it. And I can't even today, I used to be an investigator many years ago, and I used to help train the arson guys that came through. Do you know how many arson / law enforcement certified we have at West Metro now? 5-ish?
I think we're at 4 now.
4?
Yeah.
So people don't realize that. We've been doing that for years.
But the Crime Stoppers program turned down our Master Association board when they asked them, or at least your department did, when we asked to have them investigate the West Ranch fire. They said there's no indication, I think, of pre-intention.
The intent to and that's part of the state statute.
Well,
There has to be an intent there. So we have to use our resources appropriately.
Okay.
And so we can't, as appropriate, we can't just go put an Amber Alert out on a kid that is missing. We have to meet the standards to put an Amber Alert out. It's the same thing with Crime Stoppers. We're not going to take those resources and overpower them and basically destroy them because we're using them without proper guidance and without proper structure. So we're going to only use them, and again, we're not going to go to Crime Stoppers if our arson investigators have already done a preliminary investigation and determined there's no intent. It's not a crime at that point.
Well, arson can be a crime, it can be an arson crime without intent. If it's negligent recklessness.
Correct. But the situation in Marshall, they're not going to file criminal charges on that.
Yeah, exactly.
And the civil court's going to take over.
And that's after a lengthy investigation.
Absolutely.
With a lot of technology involved, which we haven't done for example, in the Deer Creek Canyon.
Well, I'll tell you, the technology that they used in the Marshall Fire, they don't own that technology.
Right.
They had to pay to go get that technology to come in. It's no different than the rock homicide we just had in Jefferson County. The technology used in that had never really been done before either.
But, you know, surveillance cameras, going to homeowners in the area or businesses and say, let's see those surveillance
We do
cameras from the time of the fire. And I see no indication that that was ever done in the Deer Creek Canyon Park fire.
When was that fire?
2019. And I got the report. It took me a year and a half, but I got the report. And there's no indication that they ever went looking for surveillance videos.
And I've not read that report, so I'm not going to speak to it. But that is proper. That's the proper process in going
It
through.
would be?
It would be.
Oh, okay. I didn't know whether wildfires were treated differently from other towns.
No.
Okay.
So are you saying that if it turned out like it was a down power line or an escaped fire or something like the Marshall Fire, that it wouldn't be investigated because of no intent? I mean, we'd still learn that that's an
It's
issue
going
that
to
we need
be,
to work on.
it's going to be investigated.
Uh-huh.
What we might say is it's going to be investigated on this level, but the intent does not allow us to go to Crime Stoppers.
Oh, okay.
That doesn't mean we're not going to do our due diligence in the investigation. Everything we come in contact with, we are going to investigate 100%. But it may not lead us to go to Crime Stoppers. Anyone else, Tim?
So I would just like to say thank you, Sheriff Marinelli, for coming out today. I have personally noticed a big difference in your department. I think the thing that you really show is that you care. You care, you're concerned, you're considerate. I've talked to a lot of your commanders. They all like you, by the way.
Thank you.
A lot of your deputies. I think the thing you're doing, like with the wellness center, like you're showing your people that you care, and you're investing in them, you're training them, you're educating them. And to me, that is such an important piece, and I know it was missing for a long time. So I think that's phenomenal. What I would like to understand is, we talked to Erica quite a bit. Where does the emergency management fit in? Where's the sheriff's office? Where's the emergency management? How does that integrate with the county? And then I'm acutely aware that you're not getting the funding you need, right? Or the support you need, or the staff you need, and I don't think you're making it up. You know, I think it's a real need. And what I want to know is, how do we as citizens, how do we help you? Do we talk to the commissioners? Do we say, hey, she's doing a really great job, give her more funding, listen to her? What's the best thing we can do to help you?
To answer your first question, emergency management has always been housed with the sheriff's department. The undersheriff I chose used to be the deputy director of emergency management. That's the main reason I chose him as my undersheriff, because he has the expertise in that field. So that's why we are building it. Our emergency management moving forward will be very collaborative with everybody throughout working together. And there was some talk of moving emergency management to the county and taking it out of the sheriff's hands. Those talks have stopped. We're going to keep it. And I can't say enough how much the county commissioners are working with me. Money, it's an issue. It's an issue. There were some fundings done in the last 3-4 years with temporary money, which is going to hurt us in 2025 because the temporary money is gone. We funded permanent things with temporary money. I did.
Where did it come from?
It came from some of the COVID money, the CARES Act and ARPA funds, and those were temporary funds. But we had to, I'm not saying it was necessarily a bad decision. We had to stay competitive with the other agencies because law enforcement is having a very difficult time finding people that want to become law enforcement and retaining them. So I'm not going to say that was necessarily a bad decision, but it was for the here and now, 2-3 years ago, which is not going to help us in 2025. And it's not the commissioner's fault. They don't have the funding. Tabor hurts us. We are doing everything in our power to go after federal grants and congressional funding because that is not brought under Tabor. So we do have a specific grant writer that works like crazy trying to find that money for us that's not going to be affected by the state Tabor laws. We have some things in the hopper that I can't really discuss at this point in time because it is a valid concern of mine. The funding. But we're working on it.
So I have little kids, 11 and 13, and I'm so happy that you said you're doing something about the car thefts. But, you know, you can probably have your own opinion of what's causing all that. One of the things I think is, Grand Theft Auto, the video game, that's like the number 2 or 3 most popular video game, and it's been like that for years. And I can't help but believe that, kids playing this game, and they're like, hey, there's a real car, let's go steal that one. And maybe you have some numbers on this, but what does a car theft cost? Like, what does it cost our society? What does it cost our law enforcement? What does it cost the insurance industry? What does it cost? What's the impact?
I don't have all the numbers on that. It's going to depend on what the car is that got stolen. But I think more so than the financial impact, when you look at, if a guy has a Lamborghini that's stolen and he's got 12 other cars in the garage, I think the biggest thing to look at, and legislature has helped us with this last year, but that guy can just go in the garage and get another car, and throw it through his insurance, and so be it. You have a mom over here that's a single mom of 2 kids that has a 1999 Ford something, and she doesn't have a backup, and she's a single mom that needs to get to work and has 2 kids. Should it matter that this is a really expensive car and this is not? Because when you look at the totality of the 2, which one should really hit your emotions more and your heartstrings? It's going to be this one. So value-wise, they should be considered the same. And this one shouldn't get more attention because it's a high-priced car. This one should get maybe equal, if not more attention. But as society, we value things. And so legislature did a great job this year in pulling back on that and saying a stolen car is a stolen car is a stolen car. And upping the punishment, so to speak, for somebody that steals a car.
Do you have any suggestions of how to come into the schools and talk to kids and say that, hey, this is not okay, so we can address the issue before it happens?
I have to say our SROs do a fantastic job. I think we have the best SROs in the world, and we do that. Our school district works exceptionally well with us and with those deputies that are in the schools, and we have deputies that are permitted to go in and teach classes, even though it's not a mandate. And so we work very well with our own schools. And so the deputies are in there. We can't put 5 deputies in each school. We have 1 and we have some that share schools, but we do the best we can.
So my kids actually go to this school, and I haven't seen it. And the SRA did come in. We talked to them, and they said I think they're covering 3 schools.
Yeah.
I don't remember what the
The high schools all have assigned SROs. When you get to the lower schools, they go to 2 or 3 different schools.
I have a family member that's not someone else. But stuff, like how do we, and then, you know, well, I was told that, hopefully, I'm sure you know this already, but the SRS says we don't have enough staff, we don't have enough money, and then they also told me nobody wants to be a cop.
Right.
Which is, you know, it's really unfortunate because I don't, you know, I've heard, you know, you could probably tell me 10,000 stories, but, you know, we've lost that respect as a society. And what I want to know is how do we bring that back? How do we bring that into our schools? How do we get the funding to do that? And that's the thing I can't quite see put the pieces together.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's in the training. We have the Girl Scouts and Boy Scouts that come and visit us at headquarters, and so we do get to touch more kids than just in the schools. We try to get the deputy that brought the balloons to the 102-year-old birthday party yesterday. He works with our businesses, and he has a whole set schedule. It's one deputy. He has a whole set schedule where he goes and reads to the kids, and then he goes to the elderly facilities also. But again, that's one deputy that's doing all of that, and he does a fantastic job. So,
Just want to say to you and the fire people, one of my colleagues asked if we could have planning and zoning look at the community wildfire protection plans, which among other things address evacuations, that have already been done by the fire departments. In the 2 years while we're waiting for the county to do this big new plan, and the commissioner said no. But this is something we could do in the interim in the next 2 years. Most of the fire departments have really good community wildfire protection plans, and planning and zoning can easily check them out when we're reviewing the major bill.
and all I can do is work with the county commissioners and zoning and all that.
I think if you want that, people ask for it.
How would you characterize the funding situation? Is it a yellow, orange, red? Like how bad is it?
This year, we're green. We'll use the stoplight. Next year, we're green, turning orange, yellow. And in 2025, we are working diligently to fix it. So, that's the outlook.
Is the property tax increase going to help you?
No, because of Tigger.
What would help you?
You know, the county is 0 for 3 on referendums. I think the biggest thing is education of the citizens. As to, you know, believe me, I've been in talks with Boulder County, I've been in talks with Douglas. I know what is going on with what they've been putting on referendums versus what we've been putting on the ballot. And so I won't deny we've been discussing what to put on. And I'm going to be discussing in a manner of looking out for the sheriff's department. But the county as a whole also. Because I think that's also my responsibility as the citizens of the county. We protect them. And so we are in discussions with what we're going to do as elected officials. So,
Thank you, Sheriff.
thank you.
Mark, would you like to, sorry, I know we're kind of going out of order.
Tim, I'm going to need to get going. I've got family coming in from Ohio, so
Instead of doing a presentation, you just want to talk?
I can make this just very quick. So I'm Bobby Baca with the Division of Insurance. I'll go that way. So I just wanted to, we like to attend community events to let people know who we are, that we're available to you if you have any issues or concerns with your insurance company. I have a team of 6 people who handle consumer complaints. In 2022, we handled about 2,500 plus complaints, the 6 of us, and then and plus about 5,000 calls. A couple of the pieces of legislation that Senator Cutter had talked about was the FAIR Plan, which was House Bill 1288. That does we'll be creating a board by January 1 of 2024. The board will be the commissioner will oversee the board. And then the fair plan will actually be hopefully in place in mid-2024 or by January 1st of 2025. We have a homeowner's underinsurance bill that passed this year as well. It was 1174.
Who was the sponsor on that?
Who are you? I know Representative Modeler was too. Thank you. So the underinsurance bill, there's a couple of things that go into effect on August 7th, which one of them is notice requirements for non-renewal. So if your insurance company is going to non-renew, they have to provide a 60-day notice, where currently it's a 30-day notice. It'll at least help policyholders give them a little bit more time to find insurance. They also require that they offer additional coverages. As everybody probably knows, Marshall Fire resulted in huge underinsurance issues. Most of those homes were underinsured by anywhere from $200,000 to $500,000, if not more. So the underinsurance piece of it the companies will have to offer additional coverages of 50% extended replacement cost, 20% law and ordinance coverage on top of what your policy limits are. And then the commissioner is charged with conducting a study on construction costs throughout the state, and a report will be issued. Then the insurance companies are required to consider the report, consider the information in that report, as well as other factors on their home when they're determining your replacement cost value on your specific home. Tim, I know you had mentioned, talking a little bit about rates, so I'm just going to kind of leave it here and if you guys have questions. I know rates and premium increases are a big deal right now, but I think we've lost half of the audience, so if anybody has any questions, I'm happy to answer them. Nope. Okay. I gotta go.
Mark.
Thank you, Tim. Well, my briefing's going to be a lot shortened, not just because we're about out of time, but also because so many things on my list here were covered by all the other presenters, which is ridiculous. Tim, can I ask you, are you able to access the Wi-Fi, the school's Wi-Fi?
No.
That's unfortunate. So, I'm sorry?
Sorry about that.
I was hoping to show a quick video that's online. I'll just encourage y'all to go look at it. So first of all, I appreciate that you ended on this note. And because kind of founding principles and what our government ought to be doing and what it ought to not be doing. So if you recall, Benjamin Franklin, as he was walking out of the Constitution Hall, someone shouted out to him, "Hey, what kind of government have you given us?" This is in 1787, right after they were negotiating the first initial Constitution, and Benjamin Franklin responded, "A republic, if you can keep it," right? And it's reflected in the Constitution, where it says that it guarantees, we are guaranteed a republican form of government, and when we pledge allegiance to this flag, we pledge allegiance to the flag and the republic for which it stands. All that to say, this is very important that we always keep that in mind, that when we have these kind of conversations, which are really healthy, and I applaud you for organizing this, Tim, that we come up with what we think are good ideas. And we're not a democracy, we're a republic. So in a democracy, we'd come up with this great idea, and then we would force everybody in government to comply with our good idea. That's what we're battling all the time in the legislature. Great conversations that result in some good ideas, and then we say, okay, now through the force of law, let's make everybody do our good idea. Rather than, let's include the republic, let's include people, and represent them. So the main difference in a republic and a democracy is a rule of everyone by the majority. In a republic, it is the majority rule while respecting the minority's rights. So I'll add one last item on that. A quote from, a quote from, I believe this was James Madison. So in Federalist Paper number 10, he says, democracies have ever been spectacles of turbulence and contention, have ever been found incompatible with personal security or the rights of property, and have generally been as short in their lives as they have been violent in their deaths. The point I want to make is, let's have these conversations, but let's not turn that into, how do we force people to do what we think is a really good idea? Rather, let's educate the folk. So it's a better approach, especially from government folk, to give information, to educate the public, and to give incentives to things like roofs that don't burn down. So when we first built our home here in Colorado 33 years ago, to make it cheaper, we put shake roof on. Well, that was a dangerous place to live, frankly, but then as soon as we could afford it, we replaced that roof with a cement tile roof. Nobody made us do that. It was in our interest, and that's how we all behave, in our own self-interest, to do something that's to our good and to the benefit of everybody around us. I'll give another quick example. It's kind of an aside from everything else we're talking about, but it does have a correlation, and that's in the efficiency of cars, of automobiles. So automobile manufacturers don't make cars that are as amazingly efficient as they can because they're required to, as much as it makes a lot of sense. That's what we want to buy. The consumer wants an extremely efficient vehicle that squeezes every ounce of energy out of that drop of gasoline. These things just happen because they're a good idea. This is what we call the laws of nature, or natural law. In our founding document says that we are founded on the laws of nature and nature's God. We act in our own self-interest. I'll just, all these topics of insurance bill, the helicopters and so on, Senator Cutter, who will always hold a special place in my heart, by the way, because when she and I entered the legislature as freshman representatives 4.5 years ago, she reached out to me, I think like day 1 or day 2, and said, let's go have coffee. I'm trying to get to know everybody, especially folks on the other side of the aisle. And so I just really respect her and enjoy working with her a lot. So I'll leave with this. There is a video that I would encourage all of you to see because it puts our environment in perspective. It's a video that was created 7 years ago by the University of Colorado. And it's called A Brief History of Colorado Through Time. From the University of Colorado, from the Geology Department. So Geology of Colorado made it A Brief History of Colorado Through Time. So it's about a 25-minute video, but if you just watch the first 3.5 minutes of it, what you'll see is this. It shows the state of Colorado and where we exist on the planet. So just like your picture of the Earth earlier, Tim, and it shows that Colorado started out below the equator, south of the equator, and underwater. And over time, and it shows a video of how Colorado migrated along with the other tectonic plates, and so over time, and came up above water and went down below water. At one point, we had an east coast in Colorado, believe it or not, and we used to have dinosaurs, and we no longer do, and all of that. I just want to say, let's put it in perspective that, yeah, we need to do our part to respect what God has given us in nature, but we're not the be-all, end-all. There's a whole lot of much bigger forces that are going on, and we're not going to stop the seas from rising, nor are we going to cause the seas to rise. We just need to do what is smart, what is in our own self-interest, and not because the government forces us to, but because we are stewards of what we've been given, and stewards of what the founders have given us as well. So let's just treat each other with due respect and not be forcing our cool ideas onto everybody else. And I think it works out well. So I encourage you to watch that video, because when you do, you go, oh, climate change is not only real, it's part of nature. This is all happening. It's happening, and we may have our part, but it's a minute part. So there's some smart things we should do. We should do really smart things as a government, like the evacuation conversation, the evacuation routes. Yeah, we ought to do that. Smart codes for construction, great idea. But forcing the will of cool ideas onto the people, that's when people start rising up and saying, hey, wait a minute, I want to operate in my self-interest, and that's when we have our clashes. So that's all. I just wanted to encourage us to behave as a republic and not a democracy. So, yes, sir, Tim.
So Mark, I'd like to thank you for coming up here. I think you have the longest drive of everybody. So, Mark, Teller County, I don't know exactly where you live, but it's a couple hours away from here. I'd also like to thank you for working with Senator Cutter. I know she's told me she's worked with you on a number of different things, so thank you so much. One of the things I am trying to do, we're part of a Rotary Club, me and Ann, and then there's your group down there, the No Flow Co. That's also a Rotary Club-based group. I'm actually picking up our, do you know who his title is? Who's our something general? The Rotary Club guy. I'm picking up I can't remember what his title is, but he's like the regional something or other.
Yeah.
I can't remember what it is, I apologize. But what I want to try to do is I don't want just, Jefferson County to do one thing. But I want to have conversations with Jefferson County, Teller County, Clear Creek County, Boulder County, and we need to have, I agree with you 100%, right? We don't want to force things on our citizens, but what I want to have is kind of some conversations where we say, yes, this is the way we're doing it. And for example, the wildfire partners. Boulder County's put a lot of money and investment. They figured out a solution. It's in place. It's working. I'm trying really hard to get that into Jeffco. I'd really like to see it in Jeffco, in El Paso County, in Teller County, and other places. And how can we get those conversations going where we're taking things that do work, they do, fit, I think, your philosophy. They benefit the citizens, they benefit the environment, they benefit our insurance, and a number of different things. And then how do we get that implemented without going to like years of debate and legislation and all this other stuff? Like, how do we just take this thing that we know works and implement it in other places? Is there a way we can do that?
So first of all, stop thinking about that as a government, solution. There are churches too, and church has a very important role in how we, I try to make a practice of visiting my own church every other Sunday, and then another church in my district on the opposite Sundays. Get to know these folks, build relationships with them, because you're going to find, so I represent, by the way, 8 counties, so I have where we are right now, in King Carroll Valley, so I get the south half of Jefferson County, get the rural parts of Douglas County, then I get Park, Lake, Chaffee, Teller, Fremont, and Custer County. So it's a nice big old chunk of beautiful land. And so I was in Meeker yesterday, and also in Park County. Meeker's not in, so I head up a task force for emergency management services. We met up in Meeker last couple of days. But when I go to these more rural areas, they say the opposite of what you're saying. They're saying, how do we keep Denver out of our business? Quit telling us what to do. What the laws that they're passing don't apply to us, and it forces us to behave in ways that are not natural for us, costs us money, puts us sideways with the government. So that's why it's really important to do exactly what you're talking about, Tim. Get out there and talk with the folk, because you'll see the other perspectives. You'll make adjustments, and maybe rather than having one size fits all for everybody, start allowing for localization of implementation, because there's a lot of experienced and smart folk out there in the rural areas as well that have their opinions. But I'll be happy to help you with developing relationships, conversations with folks, certainly within the 8 counties that I represent, that I work for. But I will encourage you to get ready to hear other perspectives and to not get ready to jump on a government-forced solution to the ideas.
How did you wind up with that? I mean, to me, like, if they told me, hey, you have to cover this area, I'd be like, holy cow.
Well, When I was serving in the House, I had all of Teller County and the rural parts of Douglas County. And then when they redrew the district lines, I had all of that, and then these other 6 counties in this new Senate district. So
Is it based on population? What's it based on?
yeah, so the state is, like every state, and like on a national level, the state is divided up into 35 Senate districts and 65 House districts, and now 8 congressional districts, and each of them are to have the same number of people within a tiny sliver of percentage each. But so every Senate district has about 155,000 people in it. Every House district has about 88,000 people in it, and so on. So it's, yeah, they try to divide it up by communities of interest, respecting county lines mostly.
And then I don't get to talk to you that often, so I'm just going to try and get some questions while you're here. But what are kind of your top 3 things that you're focused on, working on, or interested in?
Thanks for asking. So this year, because I was expanding into 6 counties that I had not represented before, driven through there, but but that was it. So I thought which was the reasons why I began visiting churches, is how do I get to know folks? Well, here's where they gather voluntarily on Sundays, and it's been an amazing experience, by the way. Nobody makes people do this. This is what my first observation, just a quick aside, is that this happens every Sunday. The music is amazing, and the teaching is phenomenal. And nobody's making them do that. It's just organic. But anyways, getting to know folk like that. And then also, I've been relying heavily on county commissioners. So I've learned to really regard highly our county commissioners. So I've sat with all the commissioners across these 8 counties and said, what do you need from me as a state senator? And 3 of my 5 bills, and we're all allotted 5 basic bills, 3 of my 5 came from county commissioners. And so, more directly answer your question, what were those about? One was access to the 14ers. So there's been in place for decades a rule that limits the liability of these property owners that own, and believe it or not, some of our 14,000-foot peaks are owned privately. Who would have thought that? But that's the case. And in a lot of the cases, they don't own the peak, but they own tens of thousands of acres. That's the access to those peaks. So for decades, we've had a statute limiting the liability of those property owners who charge nothing and simply allow access across their property so that people can get to the 14ers, get to fishing holes, to get to camping grounds, and so on. But someone successfully sued a property owner. Now, it wasn't a government property owner, it was the United States Air Force Academy. But a couple of years ago, someone was riding his cycle across Air Force Academy uninvited, but without charge, riding on their path. He slipped off a washout area, got very badly injured, successfully sued for $7.2 million. It was awarded about a year ago. So all of a sudden, all these property owners said, well, if we can suffer a $7 million loss, I'm not going to let people come across my property anymore. So one bill that came from Park County Commissioner, Amy Mitchell, she said, can you help tighten up the liability statute? So I worked on that. Unfortunately, that one died in committee, and it died because the trial lawyers convinced the majority of the people on the committee to not pass that bill. I had 25 recreational organizations come in testifying in favor of it, and only trial attorneys testifying in opposition to it. But that's something important to me. We'll revisit that. I'm not sure how. I don't know how we get past the trial attorney's influence over the majority party in the legislature right now, but that's the case. So that was a heartbreak for me. The underinsurance bill was very important to me, and that was the first one of mine the governor signed into law this year. We talked about that. Bobby talked about that. Worked with the insurance commissioner towards that because, yeah, people were underinsured by hundreds of thousands of dollars. What a shock, Your first shock was your house burnt down. The second shock is your insurance doesn't replace it. So this requires them and this is important to me, and I think it's reflective of what I was saying in the first place. We don't require that they insure people with replacement insurance policies, but we require that they offer it. So people have their lower premium cost right now. Well, you can keep that if you want, But just understand that you're not going to get a full replacement value on your insurance. So they have to offer full replacement, and they have to communicate clearly to them if it's not going to be a full replacement. So that passed and went into law, and I'm very happy about that. Another one, the property tax. So on property taxes, our property valuation is paid on June 30 of every even numbered year. So almost exactly a year ago, in June 30, 2022, coincidentally, valuations were at the peak, historical peak. We've never had property values across Colorado as high as they were at June 30, 2022. Well, who pegged it that? Everybody gets their card in the mail that says, your valuation is now 40% higher than it was before. What? Okay, so there are two avenues towards this. I'll try not to be partisan, but I'll be frank. So the more liberal approach to that is, well, let's offer them something to try to dampen that a little bit in exchange for getting rid of Tabor that we all hate so bad. So, which I don't hate. I think Tabor is one of the best things that's happened to this state. But now that's what Proposition HH is going to be on the ballot. It will offer, hey, if you guys vote for Proposition HH, then we, the state, will reduce your property valuation by $40,000. Probably averages out to about 8% of people's houses, so not a whole lot. But we'll drop it by $40,000 valuation, and but what we want in return is for you to give up your taxpayer bill of rights refund. And we're going to get rid of that over the next 10 years or so entirely. So my approach was, and this was another, this came from a Teller County commissioner. I ran a bill that was signed into law last week, just like about 5 days ago, that has the approach of let's push out authority to the local municipalities, the local taxing authorities. So Senate Bill 108, which is now law, tells the fire districts, the water districts, hospital districts, and county commissioners and so on, you guys have the authority to multiply the mills that you have property taxation authority over times the property valuation, and you're going to come up with a 40% windfall of new revenue coming in. Or you can charge, say, 40% less of the mills that you have the authority to charge, so that you don't have such an impact onto the property owners who are shocked by this new amount of money that they have to cough up. So I've been having meetings with folks around the state, gatherings of the taxing authorities all in one room. Some of them say, I gotta have that extra money. And some are going, yeah, we're authorized, 50 mills. Maybe we'll just go with 35 mills this time because we'll come up with the same amount of money we did last year. Try to soften that. They have the authority to do that, and then to turn those mills back on in a couple of years when property values normalize. And the point of all that is push all that authority out to the people, the authorities that are closest to the people, and let them become the heroes to save that day, and not grab everything, because what we need to understand is we're the parasites on the host. The host is the taxpayer. They're the families. And the parasite that kills the host also dies. So we have to be respectful of those people, and we gotta let them remain healthy so that we as a society can be healthy on top of that with our services. So those are a couple important ones. The governor did veto 2 of my bills this year. Oh, yes, a question.
Hi, I live here in the community, and I tried to contact you. I work on gun violence prevention advocacy. I've sent you notes. I appreciate your vote on several of the gun violence prevention bills. I voted yes on them. One bill that is in particular passionate to all of us that live here is the assault weapon bill, because many of us either have a friend who lost a child in Columbine, We had several, we had a student that was killed in our community in Columbine, as well as a shooter came from Columbine. Live in this neighborhood within a mile of this school. That was an assault weapon that was used in that shooting. I really feel, coming as a survivor of gun violence myself, of that suicide situation, that we really need to make sure that we hone in, and I'm sorry, this like, don't force government to do this, but I think we really need to hone in on assault weapons and putting some legislation around it. I know this year we did not have a strong bill that came forward, and it did make it out of committee. But, we've had just around us, we've had the Columbine shooting, we've had the STEM shooting, which meant many members of our community's kids go to STEM school. We had the Baisley shooting, and then we also had a shooting at Deer Creek Elementary. These are schools our kids go to here. I really would love to partner, collaborate, do whatever we can to get an assault weapon bill out there that works for everyone. I was present at the assault weapon bill hearing, and many people came from rural committees and even out of state and testified at the bill, which was really upsetting to me that we could have that situation, especially Rocky Mountain gun owners. They have such control over getting that bill. Everybody thinks it's going to be a gun grab, that they're going to come in and take all their guns if we put this bill in place. I mean, I really think that we need to have the bill put in place that has security clearance if you own an assault weapon gun. Because I really don't understand why any normal, everyday citizen needs to have an assault weapon ban. But we have a big proliferation of people out there in our community that own them right now. So how do we get those that are out there brought back in? And to me, it's got to be some type of legislation to either ban new sales, put some legislation on existing ownership as far as background checks and things like that. But I think next year we're either, we'll come back again with another bill, hopefully. There's talk that it actually will be something that will come up as legislation to vote on to ban it. But I think that we need to do something about it. And I was wondering, what are you thinking, about it? Because young kids are buying the guns, the assault weapons, and they're committing the mass shootings. And we've got to stop it.
Thanks for your expressing that. I have two-part response. One is, why is the goal to reduce the number of deaths, number of killings?
Yeah, why wouldn't it be? It's the number one cause of children's deaths right now is guns.
But the number one cause of deaths in history is when the government takes away people's guns. It's not, because if we add up all the mass shootings in the United States, it'll come up to tens of thousands of people that were killed. But if we take any one of a dozen examples of governments taking away the guns from the people, it's in the tens of millions.
No other country in the world has this problem like we have it. Yeah.
That is true.
Have banned it.
Because
so no other country
has the Second Amendment, which is a real powerful piece for us. But I do want to address, so for one, keeping the people's right to bear arms is critical. So it's the number 2 amendment to the Constitution from our founders, after our right to expression, right to have freedom of religion and so on, is the right to bear arms, because, as the founders put it, when there is fear of the government, there's tyranny. When the government fears the people, there's liberty. So that is trying to make sure that the government has all kinds of weapons and the people have few. I mean, we could have the conversation of, let's disarm the people, let's disarm the government too.
Well, see,
But
the thing is we're not taking their guns away. They still have the right to own a gun. When the Constitution was written, the Second Amendment was written, there were not assault weapons. There were not mass weapons that could kill, you know, like what happened in Las Vegas.
But to rise
So,
up
I mean,
against the government is
what the government was
is
built
why-
on then and how we exist now is a completely different world.
It's not that different, I don't think. But let's stress the killing that you're concerned about, youth. We teach the youth that life has no purpose. That we teach them erroneously that life came about spontaneously through the primordial ooze, and it just existed. That there is no intelligence behind it.
I'm sorry, my neighbor lost their daughter in Columbine, and I can't. I honestly can't take this, like how the evolution has happened, but,
That's only one. We also teach them that life is disposable all the way up to moment of birth.
Yeah, well,
If we teach them that there's no value in life, then this sort of thing happens.
I
We need to teach them.
Yeah.
apologize, but
Yeah.
Chief
Yeah.
Jules has been waiting a really long time.
okay, I'm sorry, yeah, I apologize, but I wish that we could think about this differently than a Second Amendment right when it comes to assault weapons, and I just
Then
wish you would.
millions of us will die.
Okay. All right, I'm sorry.
Instead of thousands. So let's fix the problem. Let's not add to the problem. But anyway, let's study history. and
So,
come
so
out.
more assault weapons is how you fix the problem.
What's the definition of assault weapon?
Okay, I'm sorry. Can we let Chief Jules speak?
Yeah.
Thanks for the explanation on the 14-year trespass.
All right, well, I'll just make it short and sweet. So as far as for West Metro, we're driven by our Community Wildfire Protection Plan. That's our guiding document. That's what we use as far as mitigation, everything else. That was revised back in May of 2021, so it's recent. And that's kind of our guiding document. And as far as our focus on mitigation, we're more into the focus of facilitating and collaborating with our counties, cities, the homeowners associations. And recently we were just awarded a grant from the Colorado State Forest Service on mitigation that is going to allow us to hire a mitigation specialist. That's happening right now. The board has already voted on it. So that will be going out, and that should be done relatively soon here. And those funds are to help, kind of navigate through, as well as we have a wildland Captain Brendan Finnegan, and they'll be working tightly with him. And as we work through our CWPP. A couple of things, just want to make everyone aware of. You can always go to our website, our main website. If you hit on wildland fire safety, you can see where you are in the hazard zone. There's great resources there as far as like where you live and what your hazard zone is. You can just click on the map and it'll tell you that, so you can get that information. And then just as far as the community here, an understanding, does everyone heard the red flag warnings, when we have those days? So one thing that we do as your fire department is on those days, our brush trucks follow our fire engines wherever we go. So we don't have to go back to the station and get those. And just recently, the Hogback fire was a great example. That was borderline on the red flag day, and we went ahead and chose, because of the winds, to go ahead and do that brush truck following. And we had two fires back to back. One being up in the residential area of Green Mountain, and then the other one being the Hogback. So that just helps with that initial response. And once again, we talked about earlier about Marshall, and even on some of our days, if you feel those winds coming through 470, they're tipping over semis. So you can imagine what it does with fire. And so, there's not a single department in the state that can do that by themselves. So that collaboration and working together, our mutual aid policies are huge as far as that goes. And we have the same thing. We've actually worked with South Metro, so we have a more robust wildland response, especially because of that. So that helps. And we've talked about earlier today, there's so many bills that have come through, and you know, this us being able to get the mitigation specialist, that has a lot to do with some of the bills that have passed. And at the commission level, we can continue to send those recommendations up to the legislature. We are also in touch with, I just was in a meeting on the Wildfire Advisory Council for Congresswoman Brittany Pedersen. And so, you know, you talked earlier, Tim, as far as, like, we are working on that, but you can't turn the ship on a dime. And so the one thing that we're really trying, and as a commission, is we're trying to keep people from working in silos, especially in government. So now we're working from federal all the way down to local government, and now we're finally making that connection with that street. Now we need to start building on that. So there you go.
Question.
Yeah.
I'm an aviation professional. I got a lot of friends that have done air tanker work and what have you.
Yeah.
And one of the biggest frustrations is silos. I've had friends that are, you know, they're in Cheyenne and the C-130s, they'll go out and firebomb, and it's all, another agency just took over this fire, go sit back, and all their work just burned. So how does that, I mean, because still, you know, wildland fires can be fought more efficiently according to the air assets and what they're saying and the people who I work with. How does that problem get solved, number one? Because basically, like, if you go out and waste fire retardant and you put people at risk, obviously, you know, doing that work, whether it be Neptune or whoever is going to do it, then they go land. It's not a wind problem, it's not a nighttime problem, it's just an agency jurisdiction problem, and they can't complete the mission. How does that get solved? And then I got a second question after.
So the Division of Fire Protection and Control, or Fire Prevention and Control, they are kind of our state fire agency, so to speak. And so they are our main component. And so when these fires get big enough, and I'm actually working on the subcommittee on the delegation of authority, because that comes into it too. So that's part of that part. And we're trying to streamline that process so it's a lot easier to work through. But that's where the state comes in and kind of encapsulates that process. And when you talk about air assets, you know, a great example is our multi-mission aircraft. That is huge, not only for the actual fires, but also for the mop-up time. So we can hit these hot spots and hit them right, and we're not wasting time because they can give us an infrared map of that, and then we work our strategy and tactics off of that.
Makes sense.
So.
And then the other thing, just as a free market idea, would insurance companies ever provide incentives if fires are put out, you know, faster? When you say getting your assets when something's big enough, if you concentrate on a small fire right away, insurance companies, would they ever come to you, could you ever talk to them and say, dude, we put this fire out before you even touch the house? You guys should be incentivizing us, and, you know, from the free market side of things, and make sure that your agencies get money for performing as efficiently as possible.
Yeah, as far as that goes, I know at the commission level we do work with insurance companies, and that's part of that whole buoy board as well. Okay. is encapsulating that, because especially if people are putting this effort toward that, there should be some refund. But as far as what powers we have none. You know, unfortunately, but the conversations happen.
Maybe more for senators to
yeah, but those conversations are happening, okay. And I think what we're doing in Colorado, you know, it's obviously people are watching how this commission is working, because it's a bipartisan commission, and it's pretty interesting to see the things that have come through from where we started to the things that have actually been added onto our plate. I think it's good. It's a good, healthy conversation, and we're going off of evidence and not assumption or an angle, so to speak.
Correct. And the second question I have is that Boulder was mentioned several times, but one thing that concerns me with what Boulder has done is they partnered with an AI wildfire protection company. Are you familiar with Pano AI?
Know of them.
Okay. Who would decide in your district? Would it be a county decision? Or
county.
Okay.
Because we work within the county.
We're working on that.
Yeah, because Pano AI and the Fourth Amendment just do not exist together. I talked with another senator who was sponsoring a bill to bring a statewide pilot program, and they've got 24/7 access every minute. They're looking at all properties. They say they pixelate houses, but they don't do the property lines. And I would be definitely concerned with people being able to look at inside the property, you know, whether your daughter's having a pool party with her teenage friends or what have you, it doesn't make any sense. But if I'm hiking, camping, all that kind of stuff, it's a 20-mile look.
You come up with your cameras that are already out.
I'm gonna get them to come to
They
our
don't have
next.
anyone.
Yeah, I'm just saying, when it comes to privacy, it does not.
So John Ashers, he's one of our main guys.
Just to touch base on your insurance question.
Yeah.
Rather than incentivizing us as far as how efficient we work as a suppression agency, one of the things that happens is insurance companies look at your local fire department, and they have what's called an ISO rating. And they rate it like scale 1 to 5, is that correct?
Yep, 1 to 5.
1 to 5, 5 being low, 1 being high. And what they look at is type of equipment, number of personnel, number of stations, availability of water supply in different areas of their community. And what that actually impacts is, rather than trying to encourage us to be more efficient based on giving us funds or anything else, it actually goes through one of the calculations for your homeowner's insurance. So when they look at West Metro, they rate us based on proficiency, efficiency, equipment, personnel, and all of those things, and how we build our infrastructure. And then instead of us getting that benefit of on the money side, it's actually passed on to the homeowners. So that's part of how we make decisions based on like a new apparatus we're obtaining right now as a tender, so that areas that we have less water supply, we have that portability and availability immediately versus relying on a neighbor. So I just wanted to touch on that insurance side since you asked.
That's great, because people don't really let us know that. And, you know, I have a friend in the insurance world, and he never told me that about my home insurance, that we could all actually be responsible, collaborate, and help save money and help you guys at the same time. But when we talk about pay and issues like that, like I would wish the insurance companies would look on your guys' service and sacrifice.
Yeah.
That's why I brought that up, because insurance companies are relying on you so they save more money when houses aren't burned, lives aren't lost. So I would hope that, you know, they look favorably on you as well. That's why I brought that up.
Yeah, John brings up a great point, guys. So we're ISO 1, and not only that, but we're also accredited. So we're one of 115 departments in all the United States that have both those, and that's your fire department.
So Chief Jewell, I'd just like to say thank you for you and all of your guys here and your crew. I know Brendan pretty well at this point. He's a Captain Finnegan.
Yep.
He's
a
rock star.
Yep.
We love him, we really do. All of you guys are phenomenal. Thank you for coming out as usual.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. All right, does anyone want to hear about plants, or are we done?
We're done.
We're done? Okay. Well, we are going to have another meeting like this probably in August. We're going to try to get some better participation. We're going to go to some other topics. I have the head of school safety that's interested in being in our next one. We have some other things we want to talk about. So what I want to try to do is also get answers. So if there's questions that people have, we're going to collect those and we're going to try to get answers. Marcus, thank you so much again for driving all the way up here. I think you have gone the extra mile, or extra 100 miles. But we really appreciate it. I really like to hear that you and Lisa are working together, because public safety, it should not be, we should all have common goals, right? Which is what I'm trying to hit on here, that we're one country, we're one state, we need to work together.